I wish I hadn't designed Pyramid Head. These are the thoughts of Masahiro Ito, the artist and former member of Team Silent who's responsible for giving us this nightmare creature. He would follow this up by saying, "I don't tweet the reason." But what would make someone feel this level of resentment towards their own creation? Well, it wouldn't take a genius to work out why he might feel this way. From a terrifying manifestation of one man's guilt to a cheery gaming mascot, the figure has lost all purpose and meaning. So let's talk about the downfall of survival horror's most iconic monster. Red Pyramid Thing, more commonly known as Pyramid Head, is the baby of Masahiro Ito. All the way back in the 90s when he was an art student, Ito produced a series of oil acrylic paints of monsters with strange heads, which he fittingly named the Strange Head series. Ito built off those initial designs to create Pyramid Head's physical design. He wanted to create a monster with a hidden face as to appear inhuman and disturb players, but the secret ingredient to the monster's presence was Silent Hill 2's main character. Pyramid Head was designed to serve a specific purpose. He is the physical representation of protagonist James Sunderland's subconscious desire to be punished for killing his wife. Ito intended for the monsters to have a symbolic meaning to James Sunderland's character arc. For example, the heavy metal head Pyramid Head wears is actually referring to the sheer weight of guilt James feels for what he did to his wife. Along with the helmet, the monster can be seen donning a butcher's apron, leather boots, and white executioner gloves. Ito confirmed this by saying that he designed him for James, and the characters that we see in the game are all metaphors for James's guilt. You see, unlike other horror games that relied on more well-known creatures such as zombies and ghosts, Silent Hill's collection of monsters is anything but traditional. Silent Hill as a town is a real place. It was built on top of a spiritual power original native settlers found in the area, and that power is what gave the town the ability to manifest the creatures and changes to the environment. Because of the town's power, a mysterious cult began to form that took control over much of its infrastructure, with the cult performing ritualistic executions, with the executioners wearing red hoods like seen in Silent Hill 2. Right before Miri got sick, 3 years before the events of Silent Hill 2, she and James would visit the town on vacation. On their visit, one of the locations that they went to was the Silent Hill Historical Society, which contains paintings and artifacts relating to the executioners of the town's past. When James goes back to the town for the events of the game, his guilt took the shape of Red Pyramid Thing, or Pyramid Head, using the photo of the executioners he saw because of his need for someone to punish him for his sins. My headcanon is that Misty Day, Remains of the Judgment, in reality is a painting of a regular executioner, but since we see it through James's perspective, it warped the executioner into the manifestation of Pyramid Head. Team Silent were big fans of the movie Jacob's Ladder, a huge inspiration when creating the Silent Hill series. You can see so much of the movie being sprinkled throughout the games, with the most notable reference being James wearing the same green jacket and jeans as the main character in the movie. Masahiro Ito would use a fantastic quote from the movie as inspiration for creating Pyramid Head's background. It reads, "Eckhart saw hell too. He said, 'The only thing that burns in hell is the part of you that won't let go of life, your memories, your attachments. They burn them all away. They're not punishing you,' he said, 'they're freeing your soul.' So the way he sees it, if you're frightened of dying and you're holding on, you'll see devils tearing your life away. But if you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels freeing you from the earth. It's just a matter of how you look at it, that's all. So don't worry, okay?" Ito would then draw inspiration from the movie Braveheart when creating the backstory for the town's executioners. After creating Pyramid Head's design, he developed the backstory for the design and remembered the hangmen with the bags on their heads in the movie, researching and creating lore for the game. The first time you ever encounter Pyramid Head in-game, he's standing menacingly in the shadows at the end of a hallway, just watching you, staring. It's so creepy and effective. First time playing through, you have no idea who or what it is, but you're so intrigued to find out more. And you wouldn't have to wait too long to find out more, because where he really leaves a long-lasting impression is during a cutscene shortly after the initial meet. Entering a certain room will have the players run into him as he's wrestling around with some other monsters, and James, seeing this, panics and runs to hide in a closet. Pyramid Head exists to keep James human, and help him realize that he is guilty. This is why he's often seen attacking other monsters to fulfill this role. This scene represents the conflict in his mind. His fear of facing his inner demons manifested itself as Pyramid Head attacking other monsters to remove the visions from his psyche. The next time you would see Pyramid Head would be in the form of a boss fight, and then one more boss fight at the very end of the game, with 2 Pyramid Heads this time. The reason for the twins being because that by that time in the story, James has killed 2 people, Miri and Eddie, and just like his guilt of killing Miri manifested a Pyramid Head, the same happened with his guilt over killing Eddie manifesting another one. And Pyramid Head would spend his time in between these boss fights relentlessly terrorizing James. Before the final boss fight, James admits to his guilt. He shows that he has changed. He's no longer weak. He's not running from the truth. He's ready to face it head on.
I was weak. That's why I needed you. Needed someone to punish me for my sins. But that's all over now. I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
After the fight, the creatures unalive themselves as James doesn't need them anymore, and shortly after the game ends. Pyramid Head was unlike anything I've seen before in a monster. His supernatural presence was terrifying. He's not synthesized power. You can't just shoot bullets at him until he dies. You can't kill something that doesn't exist and only shows itself to you when you're at your lowest and darkest point. Yes, Pyramid Head is a figure of guilt and inner torment and will leave when not needed anymore. But as I'm sure we all know and understand how hard it is for humans to accept the sins of their past. That's a wrap for Silent Hill 2 and Pyramid Head. Man, he sure was cool. What a great concept for a character. But since he's connected to James with a clear objective, I won't be able to see him outside of this game. But that just makes him better, honestly. Unfortunately, not everybody would share the same sentiment. 5 years later, in 2006, he would appear in the Silent Hill movie directed by Christoph Gans, and this would change the character forever. The movie is a loose adaptation of the events of the first game, but the many changes would only add to the continuous misconceptions that fans have. Most of the monsters in the movie are actually from Silent Hill 2, with Pyramid Head, Lying Figures and Bubble Nurses all making an appearance. The only monsters actually brought in from the first game are Great Children and Creepers. In the movie, Pyramid Head has a new appearance. Gone are most of his clothes apart from his skirt, as he's now shirtless, sporting a ripped upper body with a six-pack on display, as well as seemingly being taller and a new helmet design with a more triangular shape with lots of holes. This is what Pyramid Head is to most people, and I don't even blame them. If you Google him, it literally says movie character, and more people watch movies than play games. It's a horror movie, and people want to be unnerved and see terrifying imagery. They don't care about the lore, but I do. Why does he have all the bugs following him? Why is he spawning out of thin air? The only way I've been able to keep my sanity is by telling myself that the game and the movie are two separate entities, and the fact I even have to do that is so upsetting to me. The director for this movie, Christoph Gans, had some interesting things to say on a blog post in 2006 about the movie. Akira Yamaoka and I agree that Red P is not just a creation of James. Saying that Red Pyramid was solely conceived by James in Silent Hill 2 is just one of the explanations for his existence. James is just one point of view. Another perspective to remember is that Silent Hill existed before James, and that Red P is one of the executioners in the original history of the town. So clearly, there's not one particular or exclusive manifestation of him as an entity. My version of Red P was adapted from the perspective of female characters. I felt it was important that their psyche influenced his shape, dress, and physicality. While Silent Hill was around before James, Pyramid Head was not. The executioner he's talking about is one of the cult members wearing a red hood, not Pyramid Head. What separates Silent Hill from other games to me is the depth of the stories, the symbolism, the characters. But while the design in the movie is far more intimidating and menacing than Silent Hill 2, it's just so frustrating seeing him in this movie because this would propel him into mascot stardom. It was the beginning of the end. He then appeared in Silent Hill Origins in two paintings, one in the Gillespie house and then one in Motel Room 503. But more importantly, this game features a major antagonist, which is the first of the very obvious Pyramid Head clones. The Butcher, who also wears a butcher's apron, has metal plates on his head covering half his face and shoulders, and a trademark weapon in the form of a large meat cleaver? The original version of Silent Hill Origins by Climax USA featured Pyramid Head and his background story depicting him as a cannibal cook in a motel. When the project was handed over to the Climax UK division, they replaced him with the Butcher. It just feels like Climax wanted to redo Pyramid Head to fill the big baddie tormentor with an oversized sharp utensil quota and added any justification to make him fit the game, because lore-wise it's a far cry from the level of thought and dedication put into Silent Hill 2. He could have been seen as a representation of protagonist Travis's dark side for the crimes he committed. If you get the bad ending when played in the game, you can see Travis strapped to a bed in his sanitarium as he tries to escape while having visions and hearing people's phrases playing in his head. Travis is then shown dropping to his knees and looking at his bloody hands as the image of the Butcher overlaps his face. However, this ending isn't canon, as the good ending is default for just beating the game, and in it we see Travis drive off in a truck and we hear the dialogue from Harry and his wife, Dahlia and Kaufman as things lead up to the events of the first game, And we also see Travis again in Homecoming as well. Speaking of Homecoming, that would be Pyramid Head's next full appearance. This game really feels like it was inspired by the movie, and there's a reason for that. Lead designer Jason Allen from Double Helix Games had this to say during an interview with MTV Multiplayer. In comparison to the previous games, the transformation in the movie was truly visually engaging. It was also the most up-to-date representation of a shift to the Hell State. We felt that using this style of metamorphosis would ensure continuity for the game and draw a connection between the two medias. Regardless of individual opinion about the movie, they did a great job on character and set design. We felt it was in our best interest to show those potential game players a connection to the movie when they may have not played any of the previous games. He would also defend the game in a different interview with the Silent Hill forum by saying, "I know his appearance has caused some consternation with the fans, saying he's James's demon and he should not appear in any other version. As with everything else we do in the game, his presence has a very real purpose. We do not stick characters in the game simply because they look cool. Any creature you find will have a very real purpose and meaning supported by discoverable evidence. From our perspective, his presence is integral to the Silent Hill lore, and he performs a specific function that is neither arbitrary nor trite." Producer Tom Hewlett was removed from the project for protesting Pyramid Head's inclusion because the higher-ups can't comprehend that people actually care about the lore of Silent Hill. He only became involved again once another producer had left and later had this to say on the matter. "We had a tough situation because now Pyramid Head showed up, but there wasn't really a compelling reason for him to show up. Whereas originally it was like, shut up Tom, it's cool. But now it was just kind of like, shut up Tom, he just shows up. So I worked with the designer Jason to come up with this boogeyman stuff to try and explain why Alex might have imagined this figure. And I kind of see him like Fitch's daughter makes Scarlet, so that creature sort of came from her, and then Asphyxia comes from Nora. So I kind of say that the boogeyman is Alex's end product. All of the creatures kill their parents, so we tried to make it fit in." Like I mentioned earlier, Homecoming basically feels like the game version of the movie. The shift in the worlds Jason talked about from the movie is very similar in the game, how the nurses react to the light from the movie is here, and of course Pyramid Head, or should I say the boogeyman. You literally get to become him in one of the endings. The protagonist Alex wakes up strapped to a chair. Two boogeymen approach him from either side and have two halves of a Pyramid Head helmet to put on his head. Alex then becomes the boogeyman himself, and this unlocks a costume that you can use. This sounds like something you would read on Tumblr in like 2009. I still can't believe it's a real ending that they put in the game. Oh my god. The video game explanation of why Pyramid Head is here is to do with the main character's father's feelings on the children's sacrifices and his son's death. I hope the devs didn't hurt their back reaching for that excuse to put him in the game, because the real world explanation of why he's in the game is because he's popular, especially with the casual audiences because of his appearance in the movie, which is why he looks like the movie version of the character too. Downpour also features the big man in the joke ending for the game, which contains past members of the series, and it's honestly a really sweet moment. I enjoyed a lot. However, the main game itself has another Pyramid Head clone, the big bad antagonist with the hidden face tormenting you with a large weapon. Yeah, we've done this before. Known as the Boogeyman, no, not the Homecoming Boogeyman, this is just a different clone with the exact same name. They could have chose any other name in the whole world, but they went with one connected to a previous enemy in the series, just to make things so confusing. These developers really are just something else. The one in this game is huge, and he's decked out in a black raincoat with a gas mask, gloves and boots. He doesn't have any immediately recognizable deformities or torture implements in his appearance, unlike almost every other monster, at least none that can be seen by his obscuring coat. This ripoff wasn't as blatant as the Butcher because they actually replaced some elements. His movements are slow and methodical with a side of relentless brutality, going as far as to harm a kid. He doesn't represent a figure of judgment or guilt, but more of a monster whose actions have haunted the characters' lives. You actually get to play as the Boogeyman for a brief moment in this game, meaning we've now come full circle from the introduction of Pyramid Head to becoming him in Homecoming, now getting to play a knockoff version of him here. What a time to be alive. But perhaps the most egregious abuse of the character came in the second movie installment, Silent Hill Revelations. Here's a fun fact for you. Pyramid Head was not actually planned to appear. He spontaneously manifested on screen as a result of the test audience's collective desire to express their guilt and their need to be punished for agreeing to sit through this terrible movie. He now looks like he hopped in the same workout plan Chris Redfield used between Resident Evil Code Veronica and Resident Evil 5, becoming an insane beefcake. He's even doing the Giga Chat stance. But why is he a beefcake now? Why is he operating a carousel? Why is he Alessa's protector that she can throw out to fight her battles like a Pokemon? What is this?
Look how they massacred my boy.
I'm sorry, I got a little carried away there, you know, it just means a lot to me and I get a little bit passionate sometimes. The director for this movie, Michael J. Bassett, sat down with Bloody Disgusting for an interview in 2012, and this interview will tell you everything you need to know about this movie. He said, "He appears in the movie and has a reason to be there, but I can't give too much away, obviously. The notion is that the monsters of Silent Hill have some psychological resonance with the characters. One of the big things is that people compiling that red pyramid belongs in game number 2, but he was in the first film, so I couldn't just ignore this amazing character in the sequel. He's our Pinhead, our poster boy, but he needed to make sense within the story. He represents masculinity to me, and the film is about Heather's search for her father, while the first was about parents searching for a daughter. So, we reverse roles. Pyramid is not what you expect him to be. You think he's a bad guy, but whether he really is or not, something you'll have to see in the film. He's also such a cool monster, so he operates on many levels, which is true for a lot of Silent Hill. There will be people who say I completely f***ed it up and the film is lousy, but it's there for people who want to explore it." The amount of irony in this is actually insane. He compares him to Pinhead, who actually kind of suffered the same fate. I haven't read the novella the Hellraiser is based on, The Hellbound Heart, but I am a big fan of the first movie. Anybody who's seen it knows the Cenobites only have about 3 minutes of screen time, and that includes Pinhead. But horror fans fell in love with his design so much he became very popular, and by the third movie, he was a full-blown slasher killer with all of his lore kinda diluted. And there's still about 10 more movies that come after this where Pinhead is shoved in because he's just a popular figure. So the director drawing the comparison to Pyramid Head is actually so hilarious. He would also appear in other Silent Hill media such as comics, novels, spin-off games, and of course pachinko slot machines. He would make a few guest appearances in non-Silent Hill games such as Crazy Car Racing, published by Konami, as a playable character. A chibi version of Pyramid Head appears as a playable unlockable character in the Nintendo DS title New International Track and Field. Super Bomberman R also has him as a playable character. He would also make an appearance in the DLC for a game called Dark Deception Monsters Immortals, but by far the most notable crossover would be the Silent Hill DLC for Dead by Daylight. I have no problems with the crossovers, especially Dead by Daylight. It's the Super Smash Bros. Of horror. It just makes sense. Plus they were very true to the original design and he looks awesome in game. DBD is a popular title, and with Silent Hill being dormant for so long, who could blame anyone for associating him with the game? One of the skins, which looks like it's been inspired by the movies, has him wearing a skirt but the sides cut out showing his legs. As time has gone on, he started to wear less clothing, completing the full bimbofication of the character. Dead by Daylight helped to popularize the character further, which maybe got more people interested in checking out Silent Hill in general, which is always a great thing. But when I played Silent Hill 2 for the first time all the way back, I never imagined I'd get to a point where he's in a different game, and people are calling him sexy and saying I wish that was me, as he's executing somebody in the different game. It's a crazy timeline. In a world where everybody and their nan is now attracted to Pyramid Head, calling him a hot daddy to nicknames like Pee-Pee Head and Dorito Head, a small part of me dies inside every time I hear or see that. I feel like an old man just yelling at the clouds, but I'm not alone because a certain somebody out there has my back at least. Masahiro Ito was displeased with Pyramid Head's appearances in the later games, believing that they strayed too far from the original purpose. He criticized the use and the muscular nature of Pyramid Head in Homecoming, stating that I really dislike muscular enemies being made appearance in horror titles without a reason. In my opinion, enemies should have a reason for being in it, and Pyramid Head in James' story had a reason to not be muscular. He also acknowledges it would be difficult for Konami to create a new Silent Hill game without him because of brand recognition. If Pyramid Head was to be used again, he wanted him to have an impressive new direction. When developing a cancelled Silent Hill title in 2013, he designed new versions of Valtiel and Pyramid Head, different from the ones that we see in Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3. The intention was to be a more angelic Valtiel to kill off Pyramid Head in the opening scene of the game, but it never made the light of day because the game was cancelled. Ito stated in 2017 that he would only work on a new Silent Hill title if Pyramid Head was absent or he got to kill him off immediately so he could finally put an end to his torment. It's 2024 now and we know he's working on the Silent Hill 2 remake, which makes me so happy. I appreciate Ito-san for being so open and honest on his Twitter, giving us so much insight into his time working on Silent Hill. My heart really goes out to him, Fans are obsessed with only mentioning Silent Hill or Pyramid Head to him, like showing off their statues of Pyramid Head, which he gets no money for, by the way, and asking him what he thinks of DVD nerfing Pyramid Head's butt. The secondhand embarrassment I felt for this is so strong. He creates other fantastic pieces of art that deserve some love too. Pyramid Head is a very important character to him, whose roots go way back to his earliest days as an artist. I would dearly love for him to be able to use Pyramid Head again in his own works, but he literally is not allowed to because he has signed the rights over to Konami. Meanwhile, Konami can do whatever the hell they want with the character, and everybody assumes Ito is fine with all that, like he's a sellout or something. Game designers for big companies make money any way they can, so he willingly put his name on the contract. But it's not like he had much of a choice, and he certainly never predicted Silent Hill would become what it has. What really grinds my gears is his use in the Silent Hill series. Games, movies, comics, spin-offs, pachinko slot machines, the list goes on. I'm tired of seeing him, an iconic character milked into oblivion, left to be pointless and bland fan service. He only ever should have been in Silent Hill 2 where he rightfully belongs. I absolutely hate the shirtless design that is used 90% of the time in media I see of Pyramid Head, and all the changing of the lore to fit their stupid narratives. I've seen so many fans try and theorize about his different appearances outside of Silent Hill 2 to figure out some explanation and symbolism as to why he is there, but there's nothing to find. The only thing he symbolizes now is a money-making mascot for Konami. Pyramid Head's success was an inevitability. The character was a hit with audiences, and Konami realized that and decided to put him in everything they could to capitalize on the success. It's very easy to get caught up in the cynicism of how marketing and products turn characters into caricatures, but the process has to start with the creation of something truly incredible. And in his original form, Pyramid Head was certainly that. Thank you so much for listening to me rant about this very niche topic for so long. I know it's kinda silly, but I just had to get it off my chest, you know, so I feel a relief now. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, it would help me out greatly. But either way, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.